People think they're watching chaos, and what they're actually seeing is control. If that sentence made your chest tighten instead of your brain argue, you're in the right place. If it scared you, annoyed you, or made you want to say, that's reckless, this episode isn't for you. And that's not arrogance, that's sorting. Because this space is built for wolves, not sheep. Not in the internet, edgy way, in the real sense. The sense where you know the difference between spectacle and mastery. Welcome back to the podcast. If you're new here, welcome in. And if you're returning, welcome back into Soul Plus Systems. Podcast out on Spotify and Apple. Today we're talking about control. Not fake calm, not motivational discipline, real control. The kind that holds under risk. The kind that looks wild to spectators and feels exact to the person inside it. Let's start here because this is where most people get it wrong. They see a motocross rider throw a bike sideways in the air, legs scissoring instead of straight back, rotation instead of symmetry, and they say, "That's insane. That's chaos. That's reckless." But anyone who's actually been around that world, they know better, and so do I. And I'm not speaking from the sidelines. I've had quads, I've had a lot of dirt bikes. I rode out in the desert out in Pahrump, Nevada. That's not stadium riding. That's not sanitized tracks and fences and announcers. That's dust. It's judgment, mechanical respect, and definitely consequences. Out there, control isn't optional. It's how you make it home. You learn very quickly that the loudest people usually aren't the most skilled. The smooth ones are. The ones who don't flinch. The ones who know exactly where their weight is. And exactly when to break the form. Or to throw the bike away. So when I say people confuse chaos with courage, I'm not theorizing. I've watched it. I've lived it. And what I've seen, when someone happens to make a mistake, they learn from those mistakes until they master that skill. Here's something most people never think about. Textbooks love symmetry. Spectators love symmetry. Algorithms, they love symmetry. Straight lines, clean forms with predictable shapes. But real control doesn't live there. Real control lives in the adjustment, in the moment, in the second. When you feel the weight of the bike, and you shift. In motocross, symmetry looks good in photos. In reality, the ground doesn't care about your aesthetics. The wind shifts. The speed changes. The bike responds differently every time. So riders who survive, who progress, learn when to abandon the perfect move in favor of the right one. Those falls, they cost you. Sideways instead of straight, and scissor instead of extension, and control instead of posing. That principle doesn't stop at riding. It applies everywhere in life. In business, in leadership, in rebuilding your life when the old structure stops holding. Most people, they cling to symmetry because it feels safe, because it's recognizable, and because it gets approved. And wolves don't move that way. Let me orient the room, especially if you're new here. When I say wolves, I'm not talking about dominance fantasies or chest pounding. I'm talking about people who will respect risk, understand preparation, and don't need permission to move precisely. Sheep wait for consensus. Sheep wait for instructions. And sheep confuse visibility with value. Wolves move when the timing is right, even if it looks wrong to everyone else. If you've ever been told, slow down, that's too much. That's not how it's usually done. And your body knew they were wrong, you already know which one you are. This podcast isn't trying to wake sheep up. It's calling wolves back to themselves. So if you recognize yourself here, welcome to the Wolf Den. This is where the internet lies to people. Control is not playing safe. Control is not minimizing risk. Control is not staying inside the lines. Control is knowing the risk so well that you can literally move inside it without panic. In motocross, panic kills. In business, panic bankrupts you. In life, panic hands your power to whoever's loudest in the room. Real control feels quiet, almost boring to outsiders. But inside it, inside it is there's speed, there's clarity, and there's choice. And that's why people mislabel it. They don't feel what you feel. They're watching from the fence. They're the ones in the cheap seats, wondering how you made it. And here's an uncomfortable truth. When you move with precision, people who rely on rules, they feel exposed. And when you break form and you still land clean, people who survive on permission, they get loud. So they say, that's reckless. That won't last. You're doing too much. They're not evaluating your skills. They are defending their comfort. This happens in every arena. Riders get criticized by people who don't even ride. Builders get criticized by people who don't build. And leaders get criticized by people who hide. You don't owe explanations to spectators. Let me say this clearly because it matters. The motocross and off-road community understands something most industries forget. You don't get credit for talking. You get credit for landing. Out there, nobody cares about your bio. They care about whether you know your machine, and whether you respect your terrain, and whether you can ride without endangering everyone else. That culture breeds a specific kind of integrity. One that doesn't need applause. One that doesn't need validation. One that values competence over charisma. And that's why this metaphor works. Not because it's cool, but because it is accurate. Every move that looks dramatic is supported by systems that nobody sees. All the hours spent practicing, all the bailouts, all the costly falls. The spectators have no idea. The training and maintenance and repetition and failure without an audience. That's true. All on a motorbike, a quad, a dirt bike. It's also true here, just like it is in life. This podcast didn't cross 60,000 views on YouTube by accident. That milestone isn't luck. It isn't virality. It's clarity. People are finding this because it names something that they already feel but haven't had the language for. Control. Structure. Identity that doesn't bend for approval. That number matters not as a flex, but as proof that this signal resonates. Because wolves recognize wolves. And here's why most people stay stuck. They chase the jump without building the structure underneath it all. They want the adrenaline without the discipline. They want the identity without the responsibility. Systems aren't sexy. They're repetitive. They're quiet. But systems are what hold you when you cut sideways instead of straight. No system means every risk feels terrifying. With systems, risk feels navigatable. And that's the difference. This is where I'll say this once and cleanly. If you hear this voice and think, there's something underneath this, something structured, you're right. The structure lives in the vault. It's not motivation. It's not hype. It's systems, frameworks, the work that happens when the mic is off. That's where wolves train. And I'll leave it right there. If you've been trying to make yourself smaller to fit systems that don't respect you, stop. If you've been waiting for permission to move precisely, you don't need it. If you've been told that your control looks like chaos, you're probably doing something right. Precision always scares people who rely on templates. This week, don't ask, how do I look bolder? Ask, where do I need more control before I add more motion? Tighten one system, remove one leak, and make one precise move. Power isn't proven by how far you fly. It's proven by how well you land.